And if you're living here this morning, as we ought to as Christians, as ones who try to please the Lord in all we say and do, you will face persecution. People hate you. Why? Because they first hate Christ. Well, again, thank you for inviting me here this morning to open God's Word, to be challenged by His truth. We're going to do a survey of a book called Esther. We went verse by verse, word by word, be here for a whole year, because it's a book full of so much wonderful and amazing truth about who God is. The book of Esther, the theme of the book is the providence of God in protecting his people. The providence of God in protecting his people. It's an amazing book. And Joel Beakey quotes this: Esther is the only book of the Bible that never mentions God by name. Nowhere do you see the title God in the book of Esther. It's a book that has no miracles. A book that has no prophecies. A book where no one's commanded to pray. Book of Esther. An amazing book. He says this, Joel Beakey: Why this the case is mysterious, but the silence is deafening. It says the book relates how God's people face extermination by wicked Haman, and the book confronts the reader with the very question, where is God? Where is God? What is God doing? Why is God allowing this to happen to not just Esther, but a whole nation of Jewish people? Why they're facing extermination by a wicked, evil man called Haman. But as I said, this book is about providence. What do I mean by the word providence? It means to see beforehand. And God sees beforehand. God knows exactly what's going to happen. God knows exactly the end result. God allows things to happen, permits things to happen. He directs things to happen. He guides things to happen. He works it all together for his glory. And we as humans look at that and go, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why some of my family's sick. I don't understand why I lost my job. I don't understand why I struggle with my marriage. I don't understand why there's problems in the church. I don't understand the culture that we live in. But the providence of God tells us this: He knows why. He knows the reason why he allows it to happen. And ultimately, by our trust and obedience and commitment to him, he brings it all together for his glory. That is how great our God is. This word providence is first seen in Genesis 22. Remember the story where Abraham was told to sacrifice his son. He's waited so long, for many years, to have a son. He finally gets the son, and God says, sacrifice him. Now, you think, what an awful request to give to a dad, to sacrifice his son. Could I do that? No. Imagine that. It'd be horrible, wouldn't it? It'd be horrible. But Abraham goes, and we read in Genesis 22, verse 7, verse 8, these words. But Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, my father. He said, here I am, my son. Then he said, look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, my son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the two of them went together. We know the story. He ties up Isaac, gets his knife out, about to kill his son, and God provides a substitute of a ram in a thicket. And when that happens, Abraham declares, Jehovah Jireh, or my Lord will provide. Genesis 22:14. Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide. And said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. So my encouragement this morning as we look at the book of Esther is to remember bad things happen. Struggles happen. But in the background is the most magnificent, all-powerful, sovereign God who works it all together for his good and for his glory. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called for his purpose. The question is, do you believe that? When you go through those tough times, do you think about that? Does it come to your mind and hearts that I have a God who knows what's happening? Or to say, woe is me? It's a hard thing to do, to say, I trust the God who knows everything. Who wrote the book of Esther? The answer is, we don't know. And they say that the author did not reveal his name for a purpose. So we wouldn't focus on him, but focus on God. Some say it's Mordecai, the cousin of Esther. Why? Esther 9:20 says this, and Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters to all the Jews, near and far. Others say Nehemiah or Ezra. Nehemiah worked in the Persian court before going to Jerusalem. He probably knew Malachi, they say. So maybe it was him or Ezra. Others say it's Esther. Esther wrote the book of Esther. Why? Again, Esther 9:29. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm this second letter concerning the Purim. The truth is, we don't know. It doesn't mention God. We don't know the author. What an amazing book. In history, some people say, why is it in the Bible in the first place? Because surely it has to mention something about God. And most books, apart from probably Hebrews, we know the author, but not Esther. Written 460 to 350 BC, many, many years ago. Who are the main characters apart from God? We have the king, King Ahasuerus or Xerxes. Most likely, his father was Darius I. His grandfather was Cyrus the Great, a very powerful family. He ruled over the Persian Empire from 486 to 465 BC. The empire had 20 provinces. He was a very powerful man, a very wicked man, very proud man, a bit like we saw yesterday, Nebuchadnezzar. Same kind of character and mould as he was. He had mood swings. He had irrational decisions. He was immoral. And we'll see that in a moment in chapter 1, the way he treats his wife. Very immoral man. We have Haman, another wicked man, descendant of Agag, king of the Amalekites. And think about this. The Jewish enemies for the Old Testament were the Amalekites. And God told his people to destroy the Amalekites, leave no one left. They didn't do it. And through the descendants comes Haman, who now comes to Esther to wipe out Israel, or wipe out the Jews. He was married to a woman called Sheres. He had 10 sons, a close confidant to King Xerxes or Ahasuerus. Mordecai, cousin of Esther, a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin, lived in Shusha. His grandfather was Kish, a captive from Nebuchadnezzar way back. We saw that yesterday. And of course we have Esther. Amazing young lady. Amazing and courageous young woman. Willing to face a king knowing that it could cost her life to save a nation. A pagan city ruled by an angry king, corrupt assistants in the king's ears. We have this Jewish population, a young Jewish girl. A book doesn't mention God, yet God is through this book, word by word, chapter by chapter. Truly amazing book. As I said, it's going to be a survey. Chapter 1 is about the pride of the king. Pride is an awful sin. Look how good I am. Look what I can achieve. Look how magnificent I teach. Look how magnificent I rule this kingdom. And this king, Ahasuerus, was a very proud man. He had banquets, parties that last a long time. In chapter 1, there's 3 banquets. Not just one, but 3 banquets. The first banquet lasts 180 days. Imagine that. 180 days. I struggle for 2 hours at a banquet. Then I go home to my bed. But 180 days, and it'd be drinking and lots of food, and it would be just so grand, so magnificent in appearance. First one was for officers and servants. Why? Because he was proud. Look at verse 4 of chapter 1. Esther 1, verse 4. He has his banquet, and it says, why did he have it? He showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days. 180 days in all. He says, come to my palace, come to my kingdom, so I show you how great it all is, how magnificent my kingdom is. Look at what I have achieved. A very proud, sinful man. The second banquet for the men in the town, located in the Winter Palace. It was a party, say, for thousands. Why? To show off his pride. Look at verse 6 and verse 7. He brings them into the winter court, and he says, there are white and blue linen curtains, fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple on silver rods, and marble pillars, and the couches are of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, that's white marble, turquoise, and white and black marble. They serve drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to generosity of the king. Again, look what I have. Look at my riches. Look at my beautiful palace, the marble pillars and the alabaster pillars and the royal wine and the gold vessels. Look what I have. How good is my wealth? Very proud man. There's a third banquet that Queen Vashti puts on for the women. At the end of the 7 days of this banquet, the king is drunk. He does something horrible, awful, immoral to his wife. Look at verse 11, chapter 1. He tells his eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing a royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officers or officials, for she was beautiful to behold. Why did he invite her to the party? Because he saw her as an object. All she had to wear, according to his command, was just the royal crown, nothing else. Completely naked. Historians say she most likely was pregnant too. What a disgusting act to bring out your wife, the queen, in front of all these men, thousands of men who are drunk, thousands of men who looking at the king's fame and fortune, and here's my wife. You can all admire my wife. Look at my wife. What a beautiful object she is. She is my property. What a king. The pride of the king. Look what I've done. Look at my riches. I even have this beautiful wife as my property. You know what? Nothing's changed today. Pride is huge in today's society. But that's what we're taught about in the New Testament. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, Apostle Paul writes these words, but know this, or understand this, that in the last days, perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. From such people, Paul says, turn away. That's the world today. Look how good I am. Look at my riches. Look at my wealth. Look what I can do. Even in churches today, pride enters churches. We have the prosperity doctrine. What about pride? You know, that doctrine, that false doctrine they teach, if I give money to God, he makes me rich. That is not a doctrine in the Bible at all. But the idea behind that, if I have all these riches, have all this money, look what I have. It's pride. God loves me more than he loves you. God thinks I'm more worthy than you, more valuable than you. It's about pride. How good are we? That's the king, this proud king. But then we get to the second point in our survey this morning, a preparation of Esther. Queen Vashti rightfully said no. She had some dignity to her king's request, remembering that whatever the king commanded, you had to do. If I disobey the king, you lose your life. But she said, no, I'm not going to do what the king wants me to do. What does the king do? He gets rid of her. He banishes her. She disappears from the scene. So he needs to replace her for a new queen. And look back at the historical books and they say it's like a beauty contest. All the young maidens will line up and the chief eunuch will walk down the aisle of all these ladies lined up and choose certain young ladies that were beautiful in appearance, that will please the king. More objects for the king. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Sounds like a meat market. But God is sovereign. Look at chapter 2, verse 8, what God does. So it was, when the king's command decree was heard, many young women were gathered at Shushan, the citadel, under custody of Hagar, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace into the care of Hagar, the custodian of the women. So out of all the people, out of all the group of young ladies he takes back to the palace, Esther is there. By chance, no. By accident, no. By luck, no. God had her right there at the perfect place at the perfect time. Even more amazing, look at verse 9 of chapter 2. The young women pleased him. Young woman, talking about Esther, pleased him, and she obtained his favour. So he readily gave beauty preparations for her besides her allowance. 7 choice maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maidservants to the best place in the house of the women. Wow. What a great God he truly is. She found favour with the eunuch. And all the women, we're not told how many there were, this one, Esther, found favour. In the best place for the women in the kingdom, the best maidservants, the best preparation was given to her. She found favour. Joseph found favour with the governor in the jail. We'll see this morning, Daniel finds favour with King Darius. God places his people in situations, even with pagan kings, pagan authorities, and because of who they are and their character, they stand out for the Lord. She found favour with this eunuch. God works in the hearts and minds of even those who don't know him. Now you understand this. This is a year-long beauty treatment. It's not like going to local shops getting your nails done. It's not getting the hairdresser getting your hair done. It's diets. It's learning how to walk properly. It's learning how to be royalty. Now I brought up with my wife, of course, 3 daughters in our family. And one of my roles as a dad is to watch all the Disney movies. Watch all the kids' movies. And they're great. I love them very much. But there's a Disney movie called Princess Diaries. A story of a young girl, I can't pronounce her name, Mia Theopolis or something like that. She's the heir of a kingdom of a small European country called Genovia. Has no idea how to be princess. Enters this palace and here's her grandmother, the queen. She looks at this young lady and goes, "You can't be queen or princess." And she teaches her about etiquette. She teaches how to walk properly, how to eat properly, how to prepare to be royalty. I see it here for a whole year. Esther is being prepared to be the queen. How to eat properly, how to deal with dignitaries, how to respond to the king, how to know when it's safe to go to the king and not safe to go to the king. She was being prepared. God is in control. Look at verse 16, verse 18 of chapter 2. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into the royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women. She obtained grace with favour in his sight more than all the virgins, who set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. The king made a great feast, the feast of Esther, for his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the province and gave gifts according to the generosity of a king. This is amazing. He says, "I have a feast for Esther, and I have a public holiday for this young girl." Wow, how amazing is our God. Chapter 3 talks about the plot designed by Haman. Again, a wicked man. Esther has not revealed she's a Jew. She kept that quiet. Why? I don't know why. Maybe the thinking is, if I say I'm a Jew, then there's no way she would be picked to be queen. Or maybe God, for his sovereignty and providence, allowed her to keep it silent at this time. Previously in chapter 2, Mordecai, her cousin, was sit at the king's gate. He overheard two of the king's eunuchs plotting to kill the king. Mordecai tells Esther, she informs the king, and two eunuchs are hanged. So you think that all the people in the kingdom that would be promoted would be Mordecai. He saved the king. But no, he promotes Haman. Why? Because Haman probably flattered the king. "Oh, king, you're so great. Oh, king, you're so wonderful. Oh, king, you're the best king in the world." And Haman got promoted, had authority gone to his head, demanded people to respect him, to bow down to him, to honour him. He wasn't the king. Look at Esther chapter 3, verse 2. "And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman. For so the king commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage." Mordecai knew God's law, knew God's will, knew God's plan. And to bow down to a mere man would break the commandments found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 to 6. "Do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness to anything that's in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or that's in the water under the earth. Do not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commands." The crowds gathered at the gate, all bowing down to Haman, but not Mordecai. Look at verse 5, verse 6 of chapter 3. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, but told him the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, and throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. Destroy not a percentage of Jews, not 10% of Jews, not 5% of Jews, but destroy all the Jews. Do you know how many Jews were there at that time? 15 million Jews. 15 million Jews throughout the whole kingdom. Haman says, "I want to kill every single one of them." Not the first time, is it? World War II, during the Holocaust, 6 million Jewish people lost their lives. The Black Death was blamed on the Jews. Thousands were burned to death. On the 3rd of December 1066, at the Granda massacre, a Muslim entered a royal palace and slaughtered thousands of Jewish residents. Over the years, the last few days, in regard to Gaza and all things happening there, you see horrible signs of killed the Jews. No different to we see here in Esther. Haman says, kill the Jews. Get rid of all the Jews. And if you're living here this morning, as we ought to as Christians, as ones who try to please the Lord in all we say and do, you will face persecution. People hate you. Why? Because they first hate Christ. The late Voddy Bookham once declared this: all Christians can avoid persecution. All can do that. All you have to do is compromise. We say, you know what do I want to do? If we stand strong and stand out as Mordecai is doing here, you will face persecution. That's Haman's plot. Let's destroy all the Jews. Then we get to the pleas from Esther. Look at chapter 4, verse 1. Mordecai learned all that had happened. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went out into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud voice and a bitter cry. To tear your clothes means grief, deep sorrow. He hears the proposed Lord wipe out his Jews, and he says, no, can't happen, not fair, not right. But he knows he has a young girl in the palace, loved by the king, who can make a difference. So he sends message to Queen Esther through her maidens and for the eunuchs. And they come and say, Esther, your cousin Mordecai is upset. He's tearing his sackcloth and clothes and all those different areas at the gate. Everyone's seeing him do this. He's horribly upset. And it'd be like a wailing of sadness. So verse 8, verse 9 of chapter 4. He gives a copy of the written decree law for the destruction of the Jews. It was given at Shushan, and he might show it to Esther, and explain to her that he might command her to go into the king, make supplication to him, and plead before him for her people. So Hatred, which is her overseer, returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Here's the problem, though. You can't just walk into the throne room and get the king's attention. You can't say, I'm here, king, hello. No. If you walk into his throne without invitation, you're dead. If he chooses to kill you, he'll kill you. That's the kind of man this king was. If he's in a bad mood or he's sorrowful or he's angry and you just walk into his throne room, he'll have you destroyed. He had a scepter or a rod, and if you come in and he points his rod towards you, you can come into his throne room. If he does not put his scepter towards you, you will lose your life. She's worried. How's it going to work? Look at verse 13, verse 14, chapter 4. Mordecai told him to answer Esther. She says, I can't go in. He says to his cousin, do you not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews? If you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Who knows whether you have to come to his kingdom for such a time as this? In other words, Esther, if you stay quiet, you're going to die anyway. Do you think the king's going to find you're Jewish, that he's going to say, oh, it's okay? No, the law was about every Jew. You're going to die anyway. So Esther has to make a choice. What does she do? Does she stand up and stand out? Or does she say, I'll keep quiet and just hope somehow I will escape the punishment? But if she does that, even her cousin Mordecai would die. What's she do? Verse 15, verse 17 of chapter 4. Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went his way and did according to all Esther commanded him to do. Those words, if I perish, I perish. But she says, I can't do it by myself. Get all your Jews present. Fast. When you fast, you give up food and other things to focus on devotion to God. Fast, an idea is also to pray day and night for 3 days. Pray that God, through his providence, God, through his sovereignty, as I enter the king, will find favour. But if not, if I perish, I perish. Yesterday, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said the same thing. If God does not save us, that's fine too. Esther, if I perish, I perish. Daniel later on in this morning's message, same thing. If I die, I die. She was courageous. She did this for her people, but also for God. Remembering God's in control. And she goes into the king. Look at chapter 5, verse 4. He says to her, what do you want? Verse 4, she says, "King, if it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for them." The king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said." The king Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. Now, if I was a king, I'm thinking, what's going on here? She comes in with courage and knows against the law. She comes in and he says, "What do you want? I'll give you half the kingdom." Wow, that's amazing itself. She says, "Come to my house for a banquet." Why? I have my own kitchen. I have my own dining table. I have my own servants. Why do you want to give me a banquet? And not only you, king, bring Haman, your favourite person, with you. They have the banquet. Yet before the banquet, we read, it's got such a humour here, but the king's reminded that Mordecai saved his life. And the king goes to Haman, "If someone saved my life, what would you give them? What would be the best thing to do?" And Haman says, "Give them the royal robe, give them the royal horse, give them the royal crest on the head, and have a big feast and big parade for the hero." Haman thinks he's talking about himself. The king says, "Do it for Mordecai. Your enemy, one you hate, you won't bow down to you. Give him a parade because he saved my life." The pleas were, come to my house. Then we see fifthly the promises of God. Chapter 7, chapter 10. We see the mighty hand of God in action here. They go to Queen Esther's house, or the area she's in. She was a banquet. Again, the king asks the question, "What do you want, Esther? Give you half of the kingdom. What do you want?" Chapter 7, verse 3 and verse 4. Queen Esther answered and said, "If I have found favour in your sight, O king, if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people in my request. For we've been sold by people and I to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Had we been sold as male or female slaves, I would have held my tongue, for the enemy could never compensate the king's loss." I was interested in the king's reaction here. She says, "We're Jewish." He doesn't respond negative against her at all. Doesn't say, "Well, we don't want you in our kingdom. You're just captives that being here, we don't want you here." No, he doesn't respond that way. He was listening. Verse 5, verse 6. King Ahasuerus answered and said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing? Esther said, the adversary, the enemy, is the wicked Haman. Wow. That takes guts. Haman is the king's favourite person. Haman was authority in the kingdom. Haman made this law. And the king saying, who made this law to kill the Jews? Your people. And he says, he did it. He's the one who made this law. So the king is angry. He rises in his wrath from the banquet. And the very gallows that Haman made for Mordecai, the very gallows that Haman hanged on himself. He was punished with his own life. Chapter 8, Mordecai becomes an important part of the king's kingdom. The very one who was at the gate, the very one who was the enemy, now a part of the king's kingdom. And guess what? The Jews were spared. Go to Esther chapter 9, verse 18 and 19. Chapter 9, verse 18, 19. The Jews who were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day, as well as the 14th and on the 15th of the month. They rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews, the villagers who dwelt in the unwalled town, celebrated the 14th day of the month of Adar with gladness and feasting as a holiday, and were sending presents to one another. They established a feast of Purim. The feast of Purim is for generation here, for generations, and it means this: God saved his people from destruction. The word Purim comes from the word lot. It goes back to the day that Haman drew lots to determine the date to kill the people. The Feast of Lots, the Feast of Purim, is declaring that God saved his people from destruction. What a reminder from a survey of the book of Esther. And I encourage you, read it throughout the week. 10 chapters isn't much to read, is it? Throughout the week. Read about what God has done in the life of a young girl, of a cousin called Mordecai, how he used pagan kings and pagan people, but behind it all, he was in control. And we're reminded of God's promise here. Promise made back to Abraham, Genesis chapter 12, where he declared this to Abram, verses 1 to 3. The Lord has said to Abram, get out of the country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I'll show you. I'll make you a great nation, referring to Israel. I will bless you, make your name great, and you should be a blessing. And listen to this. I'll bless those who bless you, and I'll curse him who curses you. And all your families of the earth should be blessed. Haman comes along, curses God's people, curses God's nation, ends up being dead. God promised to protect his people, promised to look after his people, and that is what he has done. And let's look at chapter 10. Or chapter 10, 3 verses. The king Ahasuerus imposed tribute on the land and the islands of the sea, and the acts of his power and might, they count the greatness of Mordecai, which the king advanced him, not written in the book or the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia. Mordecai the Jew was second. Now he's second, like prime minister. King Ahasuerus was great among the Jews, well received by the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people and speaking peace to all his countrymen. Isn't that a common pattern? Joseph, prisoner, ends up second in charge of Egypt. Daniel today, the idea Jairus wants to make him second in charge of Babylon. If we live for God and obedient to God and do things God's way, he will put you in positions where you can influence others. I love William Carey's comment. William Carey quoted this: expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. Expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. And I just wonder, we as Christians, what impact we can make to Victoria. The other states laugh at Victoria in regards to Christianity. They see Victoria as a very anti-God state. A bit like we saw this morning. But we can make a difference in this state. Have no doubt about that. If we do it the way God wants us to do it, He'll put you in positions in your school playground, in the community, in your workplace, in your family, and you make a difference pointing people to God. And one by one, as God saves soul after soul after soul, imagine the difference it would be in Victoria. Imagine the difference it would be in your local area. Imagine the difference it makes in the world. Maybe be like Esther. Have courage, obedient to God, and watch what God will do.